Hello, welcome back to our channel. Today, continuing with the theme of tow vehicles that we've recently been doing on the channel, I've noticed a lot of vibration from my truck when I accelerate from a stop and also when I go to come to a stop. So to fix that problem, I've made this. And if you're wondering what this is, stick around and I will explain it. Okay, a lot of y'all people ask what's axle wrap and why is it bad. I've made some little drawings to explain. Okay, this is your spring. Okay, this is your center chunk and this is your tire. Well, when your tire torques this way, what happens is the counter torque wants to lift your differential, and when that happens, what it causes is it causes your spring to make an S shape like this. Well, the spring doesn't want to be in an S shape, so the spring naturally wants to come back to this. So what happens is the rear end shudders. It can also cause the tires to hop, because when this spring goes back to its natural form, it will actually bounce the rear tire. That is extremely bad on your drive shaft, your axles and all that. It can cause it to break. It also causes your U-joints to be at a real bad angle, and that causes problems. It also causes fatigue in your springs, and they'll wear out quick. Well, there's a couple of ways to fix it. If you'll come down here and look, your spring is multiple packs of leaves, and these leaves are all attached in the middle where your axle is. Your axle would be here. Okay, and they're attached with U-bolts, and this area is actually touching each other, but out here on the edges, they're actually a bit fanned out. Now, to correct this, you can come out here and put some straps and strap these down, or actually clamp them down, and it causes these lower springs to engage quicker. Well, when you do that, you can lose spring travel, and the way my truck is set up to also do some overlanding, reducing the spring travel is bad. You can also go with a heavier spring. Okay, if you go with a heavier spring, you'll get a harder ride in the suspension, and when you're not towing anything, it'll be a lot stiffer, and it can actually be so stiff that it bounces because it won't give. Okay, now another thing you can do is the old school like traction bars. Okay, what this is here's your spring, and here's your spring hangers, and your axle would be here. It goes under the axle and comes out, and it has a rubber bumper on the top of it, and when it goes to make an S, this rubber bumper comes up and hits the spring in this area down in this, and what it does is it collapses all these leaves and causes it to engage quicker. Well, that's perfectly fine, but that only works when you're accelerating. When you're decelerating, the axle can do the same thing. When the tire goes to stop, it twists the axle in the other direction, and it makes an S in the other direction. Your axle would be here, your tire would be here, and when you're trying to stop, this force is going this way. Well, your axle will be trying to go down, so you can make an S shape in the opposite direction. The traction bars only work under acceleration, and when you're pulling a trailer, not only do you have to think about when you're pulling off at a red light, but also when you're stopping at a red light. Okay, so what I done is I made this. Okay, what this is called an anti-wrap bar, and what this allows me to do is when this axle comes up, there's a shackle up here, and this shackle down here like this, the shackle comes up, and this comes out into a heim joint, and when it goes to to torque and go up, this bar catches it because it's a lot longer than the spring. The ideal is you want this as long as you can get it, the longer the better, because you have more leverage. Okay, now you don't want to put one on both sides on a four-wheel drive vehicle like mine, because what happens is you get articulation like this. This is the tire, and this is the tire. And if you have one on both sides, if you have one here and one here, you're limiting how much your axle can play. So what you want to do is this section of this anti-wrap bar is as close as you can get it to the center point of the axle. And with this heim joint, it allows, this would be the heim joint, okay, and it has a ball in here that rolls around inside of this joint. And what that does is it lets it flex, okay. And like I said, the way it works here is, seeing it's in the center, it's not going to twist as much in the center as it would on the edges. So you'll just run one anti-traction or anti-wrap bar in the middle with a shackle, and all it can do is, it has play on it, a little bit of play up and a little bit of play down. But seeing it centralized with this shackle, I drew this upside down. When you put this bar in, this is the bar, and this is your heim joint, okay. This is the anchor point of your anti-wrap bar. Your shackle, you want this shackle, you want it to come down like this, and you want it as close to 90 degrees as you can get it, okay. This angle to this angle. And what that allows is, when the axle travels up and down, when the axle travels down, the shackle comes past this and rolls over and allows it to come down, and when it goes back up, it rolls the other way. That's the reason you want this as close to 90 as you can get it, because when you go to take off, it's already at its almost max. Max would be straight up and down of what you have this off, so it only has this little bit of room to travel. So the axle never really gets an opportunity to lift, especially if you make this bar extremely long. If you make this bar, say, you want to go as far forward as you can, so ideally you want to go all the way to the hanger. If you have a middle hanger, you want to go all the way to the middle hanger on your axle. And what that allows is, the longer this arm is here, the less it travels in the shackle, and the less the axle can twist up and down. And like I said, when you're under braking, this axle nose wants to dip, and when it goes to dip, this right here will spin around. Your anti-wrap bar will spin around and pull the shackle at a 90 degree to where you have it attached. So that's how it works. And also, when you get full droop, this axle shackle will continue to come all the way around, and it's just some math you have to do. That's the reason you use this heim joint. It's got screws in it where you can lengthen or shorten where your heim joint is, and you just have to adjust it, put it on there, get as close as you can to a 90, or what I done is I set it at 90 to begin with, and when I went to get full axle droop, I couldn't quite get full axle droop, so I had to pull mine down to about 80 degrees. That way I could get full axle droop on mine. And the way I done that is I just screwed this heim joint in further into the pipe and made this overall length to this bar shorter. So instead of being, say, 60 inches long from where it is at the axle to the center of this, I made it like 58 inches, which pulled this shackle further back and allowed me to get full axle droop. And that's how an anti-wrap bar works. If you're going to be towing all the time, you're never going to have your vehicle off-road or anything like that, and it's your dedicated tow vehicle, The best route would be to go with the heavier springs, but seeing what I do with my truck, if I put heavier springs on it, I'll end up with less axle travel and all that. But that's the way I fix the problem with axle wrap. And the axle wrap in those Toyota trucks at low speeds between 10 and 15 miles an hour, even when you're not pulling a vehicle, when you're on a steep grade, you can feel the truck shudder. Pulling that camper when I was on a steep grade, it was really shaking bad. So that's the reason I made this anti-wrap bar to fix that problem.
That's all it?
That's it. That's.
I could really give an input. I really didn't understand. I didn't know what was going on.
Also, I was noticing when I was coming to a stop, like really needed to stop quick in an emergency stop, it was trying to axle wrap the other direction and shudder as I was decelerating. So that's something to think about on your tow vehicle. If you feel that shudder, that's what's happening, and these are the common ways to fix it. Most people are just going to put a heavier spring in it, especially if they're pulling a big camper. But that was not an option in my truck. I could have went to a heavier spring in my truck, but my truck is also my daily driver, and it's an off-road vehicle, and with a heavier spring, it would have rode worse, and I would not have as much axle articulation when I was off-roading it. So if you're planning on doing overlanding with your tow rig, this is really the way to go.
Okay, so you have to rub it up.
Well, that's all I had to say about that. And right after this, we'll show some pictures of mine installed. I was not able to go as far forward as I would like to. Mine is not quite the length up to the middle hanger, but where the cross member was on the truck, if I would have went to the center hanger, it would have been at a very terrible angle. So I would back off of that one on the first cross member that goes across the bed. Another option is you could put another cross member in there, but that would be too much work, and I didn't have time for all that. So mine is a little bit shorter than ideal, but I've tested it and it works. It took probably 95% of the axle wrap out. Before I was honestly getting about 4 inches of up and down movement. Now I'm not getting but maybe a ½ inch if I'm really under load. So that really reduced how much axle wrap I was getting. I was literally turning my spring into an S. It was bad. But like I said, continue to watch the video and it will show you how I done it. I didn't weld anything to the axle. I didn't weld anything to the cross member. Everything I done is bolts. And before the internet goes crazy, I also know that the bolts that are on the back of this are not grade 8 bolts. All they had at the hardware store at that particular time and the length that I needed was grade 5 bolts. But as soon as the hardware store gets grade 8 bolts in stock, I will be replacing the 4 bolts that holds this back bracket.
Okay, so
that's it.